Marley was dead to begin with, as dead as a doornail, and yet his ghostly visage appeared on my door knocker and said,
What show is this?
Welcome to Dear Watchers, an omniversal comic book podcast where we do a deep dive into the multiverse.
We are traveling with you, usually through the stories and the worlds that make up an omniverse of fictional reality we all love. And your watchers on this journey are, as always, me, Guido Scrooge.
And me with my little crutch, it's me, Tiny Rob. Hello, Governor.
Plus, we have two guests, but I'm going to start with the guest that I never thought we would get on our show. This is the best guest get we could ever have imagined, because it is our dear friend, the lovely partner, spouse of Elliot Comic Art, Nancy. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, I'm so flattered. That's not my usual introduction.
Nancy, I don't like comic art.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's going to be her new nickname.
Nancy, what's comic art? I don't get it.
And of course, that other voice you're hearing is none other than Elliot Comic Art himself, friend of the show, creator of the incredible Amalgam Minis line, and the only person we could look back on the year with.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I believe this really seals the record for the most appearances.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No one's catching up to you again. You're good.
I'm the Lionel Messi of
Lionel. Yeah.
Dear Watchers.
What is that?
Oh, it's a sports reference. I'm such a.
Are you showing off for Nancy now? Come on.
All these years.
It's true.
So we are looking back on the year with a trip through the multiverse. We're exploring the Dickensian Christmas Carol universe.
Yes. Well, actually, sorry not to be a Scrooge, Guido, but we're not. Although that is definitely a multiverse story.
Do Dickens stories coexist? Maybe there is a Dickensian multiverse.
But even Christmas Carol itself is kind of a multiverse story. You've got different possibilities, different timelines going on. So maybe one day we're going to talk about that. But for today, we're just going to use the structure of that story.
Yeah? How so?
Well, our focus usually remains on comics, but as a podcast about the Omniverse, we are intentionally pulling in lots more media to wrap up the year with.
Yes, and create entry points for everyone who listens to us. And this is a good episode to share with friends who don't love comics, because we have someone on here who doesn't love comics. So what better way to wrap up the year?
That's me, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, that is Nancy. I don't like comic art.
Or maybe Nancy, I tolerate comic art.
Yes.
So we're going to explore the past, the present, and the future. And of course, first we're going to go back to the past. So everyone, grab hold of my rope, my magical robe, and my ropes, and let's travel into the past.
All right.
Okay.
So for the past, we're going to start with the favorite thing you read this year, because this is about revisiting the past, not just the past of 2022, but even before that. So what's the favorite thing you reread this year? Elliot, why don't you start?
This was, so Guido, you and I have been on, I'll share with everyone, that you and I kind of picked some things to reread. They're sometimes based on what's coming up in the MCU, and sometimes just based on what we're both interested in rereading. And so it was a tough choice between the Thor the Jason Aaron Thor reread we did for Thor: Love and Thunder, before Thor: Love and Thunder, and we just wrapped up our Death of Superman. But I have to go with the Jason Aaron Thor reread I did. I just loved revisiting that. I had only read it once through, and we started with Gore the God Butcher, went all the way through the Jane Foster Mighty Thor era. And I just really enjoyed it. I love Russell Dodderman's art. I love the story. We recorded a podcast on it. And it was definitely my favorite bulk reread.
Yeah, and people can go listen to episode 53 to hear us talk about that reread.
What about you, Rob?
Yeah, so this was probably the easiest question of all the topics that we're going to discuss right now. And we had a very meaningful interview conversation with Catherine Schuler Gruenwald, the widow and legacy advocate for the writer and editor Mark Gruenwald. And after talking to Kat, it really inspired me to go back and read Mark's 12-issue miniseries of The Squadron Supreme. Ooh. I had read that in middle school, and I think it really spoiled me because I really thought that's what comic storytelling was. And that storytelling is definitely rare. And it wasn't until years later that I had read Watchmen, and I think reading Squadron Supreme first was one of the reasons why I wasn't even bowled over by Watchmen the first time I read it, because it was like, oh, I've already read kind of a take on this kind of storytelling. So yeah, I just reread it, and it is such an amazing 12 issues. It is just phenomenal, and the depth of the storytelling and how economical it is also over 12 issues. And it's just fantastic. So I really loved rereading this, and I hope to actually read beyond some of the other Mark work on the Squadron. I had read a little bit of the work he had done before that 12-issue series too. So I want to keep reading and see where his work goes from there. Nancy. Go ahead.
So I'm now really excited. I'm adding it to my 2023 list.
Oh, yes, definitely. Everyone should definitely read it.
I see Nancy taking copious notes, too.
Yeah, definitely read it and then listen to our interview with Kat, because it gives great insight into Mark's take on storytelling. But yeah, Nancy, what about you as the person least familiar with comics? For once, it's not me on this podcast.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm going to very quickly diverge from all of you in that I don't reread things. I like so many new things out there to read that I was like just flipping through my Kindle and looking at my bedside table and being like, no, it's all new stuff for me. So I really can't even answer that honestly, unless it's like books that I've had to read to my children over and over again. So
you reread the love letters I wrote you every night before you go to bed.
I definitely do.
Have you reread, like, in your life? It's just not a common thing. Like, is there a book that you've returned to that you love, or?
Yes, I haven't read it for ages now, but it's about time. It's called The Brothers K, not Karamazov, and it's by David James Duncan, and it's like a sort of epic novel that follows a family over close to 100 years, and I have reread that one a few times. It's about time to bring it back, actually, but it's just so hard when there's so many new things out there to read, or, you can reread your comics.
I will.
Well, comics are so much, I mean, even though Elliot and I especially tend to reread these really large volumes, but otherwise comics are generally easier to reread than a novel, because you can get through them quite quickly, so it makes sense that you wouldn't reread a novel quite as often.
Yes, although the flip side of that is that I find choosing a book to read to be one of my least favorite tasks, so at some point it would make sense that I'd return to books I've already read, because I get stopped in my tracks when I have to choose a new book. Yeah,
things you like.
Yeah.
So for me, I am choosing a comic. I do reread books sometimes. Sometimes accidentally I reread a book because I'll start to log it on Goodreads and realize, oh, I read that before. So, which just shows you I don't pay a lot of attention to the things I read sometimes. Otherwise, comics I always pay a lot of attention to. But I'm going to choose, and it's going to be a little self-promoting, because I'm going to choose our reread of Promethea, Rob, that we're doing right now on our spin-off podcast, Omniversity, because I've reread that many times. It came out starting in 99. So over the last 4 years, I've reread it probably half a dozen times. I hadn't read it in maybe 5 years until we were rereading it. And this is the most in-depth I've ever examined it. And it is so dense that I'm still discovering new things about it. And that is really cool for a work that I love and have revisited so many times, to be able to explore it and find new things about it that I appreciate and love. So I'm enjoying it. We're only, what are we? Not even a third of the way through. So we have a ways to go.
Yeah. Now, what if you want to, take in some entertainment, but reading, it's just so much work, right? Right, everyone. So what about watching someone? The lazy person's reading, right? So what is your favorite thing that you've rewatched this year? Nancy, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I do have an answer for this. It's not part of your Marvel or in general comic universe. I do not usually rewatch things either, but I watched Bridgerton twice. I watched the second season, and then I had to go back and watch the first season, and then the second season again, which is unheard of. Like, Elliot walked in on me watching it. It was like, didn't you? He was...
No, to be fair, I was doing work, and she was down in the basement, and I could hear it was Taylor Swift, and people, like, moaning and climaxing, and I was like, what is she watching? And then she was, like, rewatching Bridgerton.
It was a violent version of it.
A violent...
What prompted rewatching it, since that's so rare for you? And that's a commitment, because it's more than... It's not a movie, right? It must be at least 10 hours or something.
Okay. In no particular order, one... Jonathan Bailey, watching it, star of Bridgerton season 2, but number 2, I think it's because I loved Pride and Prejudice when I was younger, and what I loved about that and that Bridgerton does so well is they build up they build up the tension of what it's like to fall in love, and as all 4 of us on this call know well, once you are very happily settled in your love, that's not an experience you get to do over again. So it's like a way to live that while, still having the relationship you do, but to watch others. They do it really, really brilliantly. And I also I like the way they mix the time period, but they've made it very multiracial, and they bring in modern music, and they're sort of juxtaposing the modern and the old in an interesting way. So, but for me, it's like mostly the building of that tension. And Jonathan Bailey.
That's why we loved Heartstopper so much. I hadn't realized why I loved it so much as they build up. It's like sorry, this is not a rewatch or anything, but I wanted me while you were talking. I'm like, that's why Heartstopper was so good.
Yes.
It was so authentic to what it feels like to fall in love.
Yeah,
Totally.
And, Guido, I'm sure you also, for you, that you were going to say Bridgerton also.
I've never watched it, and I do feel like I should, but it's not made it yet.
You got other things on your list, yeah.
And it's funny, Elliot just reminded me that I rewatched Heartstoppers 3 times, so I should have chosen that, but I didn't choose that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, and actually mine is not comics related, which Heartstoppers would have been, and I highly recommend it, but I was thinking about things I rewatched that really, on this viewing, my relationship to it changed. And the only thing, or one of the things that came to mind was probably toward the beginning of this year, they did a UK limited edition release of the 1991 movie Drop Dead Fred. Anyone other than Rob remember this movie? Elliot, you remember it? With Phoebe Cates.
Yeah.
So watching it now, and I loved that movie as a child, and I used to rewatch it a lot. Watching it now, it is so adult, and I understand why I loved it, because it's about mental illness, and it's about depression, and it's about like growing up, and it's actually pretty dark, and there's things about it that are a little disturbing, and they wouldn't find their way into a kid's movie today, and I loved it. And rewatching it this year, it has surrealism too, of course, which I really am drawn to stories with surrealism. So rewatching it, and I probably have not seen that in 25 or more years, because they never released it on DVD in North America until very recently. I loved watching it. So Drop Dead Fred is my
I had
pick.
never seen it, but I think Guido, I know you're not an only child, but you were a latchkey kid, and I was an only child, so I can even then appreciate it as having that imaginary friend and finding something to fill your time when you don't have someone at home as well. So I think that part, even as an adult, really resonated with me, and definitely I wish I had seen it as a kid.
I feel bad about judging it now because I didn't get it, and I haven't thought about that movie. So
no, and that's what, and again, I knew I loved it, but I didn't, and I knew it was a little edgy and adult, but I didn't know the depth of the story that was happening and what they were doing with it until this viewing, which is why I chose it for this question, because it really transformed my relationship to it as a story. So that's my favorite rewatch this year. Rob?
So I have a little cheat because I don't have a specific one single thing, but I am a big lover of physical media, as is Guido, I know. And yeah, I just didn't watch a lot of... I would buy these DVDs and Blu-rays and things like that, but I wouldn't often take advantage of the special features. So I really sat down and said, you know what? Some days I'm going to sit and listen to the commentary tracks on some of these things. Because these are things, everyone has these really impressive commentary tracks, but you don't sit and, I've already seen this movie. What am I going to sit through the whole thing and listen just to the commentary? But that's what I did. So I went and sat through the original 1978 Halloween. I watched it twice with 2 different commentary tracks. I watched Creep Show with George Romero and Tom Savini doing their commentary. There's a British show I love, this horror comedy show, The League of Gentlemen, and all 4 of the creators of that do commentary. And it's just fun because on all of these, all the ones I listened to, it's people that work together. They knew each other really well. On the Creep Show one, you can literally hear George Romero lighting his cigarettes throughout the entire time with his lighter. So it's just like him and Tom Savini in Pittsburgh sitting there watching it. The League of Gentlemen, they went to college together, so you can just hear people who have known each other for decades. And it's just really fun, and it does give you insight into the process. And it's something I just kind of want to continue to do more in 2023, is actually take advantage of taking in these great special features on all of this great physical media. Elliot, what about you? I know you're like Guido. You're constantly rewatching stuff too.
I really, really struggle with this. I'm looking at my list right now. What is written down? I still haven't decided. I just recently rewatched almost all of Phase 4, except for the MCU, except for the television shows. But I did rewatch the Hawkeye show, and I really love that. I love Shang-Chi again, and I started watching. If I had finished Watchmen on HBO, I still haven't rewatched it, and I got like 3 episodes in, and then got distracted by new stuff. That probably would have been it. But I'm gonna go with something totally different. I know you guys did, I rewatched Willow in preparation for the TV series. I hadn't watched it since it originally came out. And I didn't have high hopes for it because I was like, I loved it as like an 8-year-old. It's probably not going to be that good. And it was really good. Like I couldn't remember any plot, but every time a new scene came up, I remembered exactly what was going to happen in that scene. And then I would have no idea what was going to happen. And then a character or an event happened. I'm like, I know what's going to happen again. So it was the, strict definition of nostalgia. I just loved watching it. I remembered how I felt about watching certain scenes, and I remembered my interpretation of those scenes as an elementary school kid. And so got to experience what that felt like, and seeing it now as a 40-whatever-year-old with an adult lens. And it was great. It was like a classic George Lucas. It was what I loved about Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and Indiana Jones, and everything mashed up into like George Lucas being like, we should just do like a Lord of the Rings thing. Before Lord of the Rings was even a movie. It's recency bias. It was.
Why do you think you never revisited it before now?
Because I probably thought like, I loved it as a kid. It's just not going to be good. It wasn't, and it's not like people don't talk about it like they talk about Back to the Future and Star Wars and things like that I have revisited multiple times. I've rewatched Jurassic Park, but these are franchises that are getting picked up, or Back to the Future is just, I love that movie, and I rewatched that whole trilogy again. But yeah, it was just, I just didn't give it, I hadn't thought about it until people started talking about it again because of the TV series, and it was really fun. It was great. Yeah.
That's amazing. Hold on.
Well, I'm going to say, right when we finish recording it, I'm going to be like, no, never mind, it was Shang-Chi. But that's
yeah, hold on, guys. Someone's yelling at me from the other room. Oh. No, Bob, I can't put another coal in the furnace. Do you know how much coal costs with inflation right now? Okay, sorry, Bob. Okay, everyone, let's jump into our giant cornucopia and travel into a new time, into the present.
Who knew this episode would really demand that you know A Christmas Carol? So.
Deep cuts.
So for the present, we decided to switch media forms. We didn't want to stay in any one format. So let's find out what we are listening to right now. So this isn't a curated answer. This is the true present. Not right now in this very minute, obviously. But the last thing, therefore, that you listened to. And I'll start. We're going to do music and podcasts. And I will start with music. And hold on. I looked earlier at what my last played was, and then I forgot. So now I need to look again so I can tell everyone that the last thing I listened to was the In the Heights soundtrack. Oh. So I put that on because we had gone to the Museum of Broadway, and it made me want to listen to lots of my favorite Broadway shows, and In the Heights is one of those. So I listened to that and loved it.
You know, trivia for you.
Oh, no.
You know which In the Heights actor from the movie that they made is in the MCU?
Oh, well, you mean Red Hood?
No.
The Hood.
No.
Oh, he's going to be. Yeah.
Going to be.
That guy. Someone who already is? I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
My 4.5-year-old wanted to watch Iron Man 3 the other day, and Corey Hawkins is like a military guy.
Oh, get out.
And I was like, oh my gosh. He's like some random bit part with probably 300 people down in the credits. And I was like, oh.
That's fun. Well, maybe he'll come back. That would be fun.
There you go.
All right, Elliot, what's the last music you listened to?
It is definitely from our Christmas pop playlist. Hold on. It's the old 97s.
Get out.
The Guardians of the Galaxy. Do you know it's Christmas time? Oh, I don't know what Christmas time is, but hold on. I'm botching it.
Something about Christmas.
It's something about Christmas. I don't know what Christmas is, but Christmas time is here by the old 97s. And it's probably the most played Christmas song this holiday season. I've been an old 97s fan for 15 years. Nancy and I have seen them live twice.
Yes.
In Brooklyn.
Yes.
And Massachusetts. Yep. And I've seen them live many times. And now my fandoms are merging with the MCU.
Yeah, who'd have guessed that merged?
Yeah.
And it's a really fun song, and my kids love it. Or our kids, love it. So.
Are they?
Yeah.
It was fun. Our 10-year-old's favorite is the Kevin Bacon song from the Christmas special.
He was singing it, but that's an old 97
But that's
song.
the one you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the other one.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was really fun because prior to the Christmas special, we were like, you need to understand who Kevin Bacon is. And you need to have a little bit of understanding of Footloose. So we pulled out scenes from Footloose for them to watch so they could appreciate Kevin Bacon.
I just found a drawing of Graham's. It's a little strip of bacon, and it's a little word balloon that says, "Hi, I'm Kevin."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's really clever. Nancy, what are you listening to right now? What was the music you last listened to?
Oh, gosh. Well, from the same shared playlist that we have for our family on Spotify, when I drive our 4.5-year-old to school every morning, he wants on repeat, so that I don't have to listen to his songs on repeat. We have a deal where we get his songs on the highway and my songs when we're off the highway. I get more time, he gets less. But he wants Spidey Bells nonstop.
Which is from...
Oh, that's from the closing credits, right, of Into the Spider-Verse?
It's not even in the closing credits, I don't think. We just watched Into the Spider-Verse again. It's the album that they made that they reference in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's Chris Pine as Peter Parker singing all these songs. It's really fun.
Yeah, so that's not by choice. That's like... It's entertaining, but it is not what I would have, like, by choice be last played. Let's be honest, it's better than, like, Kaboomer's kid music version of anything. So
Kids Bops. Or
Kids Bop, yeah.
Just Spidey Bells over most of the others. And what about you, Rob?
I do, of course, it is around Christmas time, so I do like a Christmas song, but I'm kind of selective in that. I love the Monkees Christmas album. Of course, the Pogues, Fairy Tale of New York is great. But my go-to Christmas album is A Christmas Gift for You by Phil Spector from the 60s with the Ronettes and the Crystals and Bobby Sox and the Blue Jeans and Darlene Love. It has what I definitely consider the greatest Christmas song of all time. Darlene Love's... Wait, now I'm blanking on the title.
Christmas Baby, Please
Christmas
Come Home.
Baby,
Right? No,
Please
that's
Come
not
Home.
it. That's Bruce Springsteen.
No, Christmas Baby, Please Come Home.
Baby.
Yes. Yeah. And because I also had such a big connection to watching The Late Show with David Letterman growing up, and definitely was a thing that I did with my dad all the time, who's no longer here. And every year, Darlene Love was on David Letterman, and she was on Letterman for 25 years. And she did Christmas Baby, Please Come Home every year on Letterman. So that album, that song has such a resonance with me. And even though Phil Spector did murder someone, I still love that album a lot. It is my go-to holiday listen.
All right. So next up in your ears right now, what podcast are you listening to? Like, are you partway through or did you just finish? Nancy.
So I have two, but Elliot told me one was more interesting than the other. So, or at least for this purpose. It's called Chris and Dave's Reality Podcast. And I don't even know how I found it, but it's these two 40-year-old something English guys who just destroy, like they tear. I watch Love Island, England and Australia, and they tear it apart. And it's very entertaining, and they love nothing more than when their listeners write into them and like tear them down and everything. So they just, it's just funny because they have a little more contextual, like it's a huge show in England and the way it's not here. So that's kind of fun for me to hear their take on it and feel a little less alone in my viewing of Love Island.
Have you written in?
Yes. What's that?
Have you written in? You said they accept reader comments.
They do, but the problem is that they're broadcast on delay here. So by the time I would write, like they're 3 weeks ahead or something. So,
no problem.
But it is, and then I also used it for Love Is Blind. So I just enjoy it. They're thoroughly amusing. So that's the one. If I was being serious, I love this news podcast called Mo News. That is great. From Moshe Shenouno. So,
well,
okay.
Get this, Nancy. My podcast is also a British podcast recapping a quote-unquote reality show.
Yes,
so we are really in sync here.
Yes.
So one of the biggest things I have discovered this year, couldn't fit into one of these questions, but one of my biggest obsessions, one of the things I've fallen the most in love with this year is the British game show Taskmaster. And I love this show. It is just one of those shows that, especially in kind of like dark times and stuff happening, it just makes me feel good to watch it. And it's funny people doing funny things. And it's
clever.
It's very clever, and you can actually watch them if you're listening in the States on YouTube. And I have been, the last thing I was listening to is the official Taskmaster podcast, hosted by the great British comedian Ed Gamble, and he has a guest on every episode, and they rewatch an episode of Taskmaster and talk about that episode. And he has a lot of former contestants from the show on, so I was just listening to them go through a season 2 episode, and that was the most recent thing. I feel like this year is the year of recap podcasts. I don't know, maybe it started last year, but all of a sudden there seems to be so many recap podcasts, and for the most part, I'm pretty down with it.
Wait, Rob, what is the premise of the game show, briefly?
So the premise of the game show is that they have a fun, weird task to do. So, for instance, draw a picture of a horse while riding a horse, or make this block of ice disappear in the quickest amount of time. And what does that mean? And
they're very open-ended, and they're pre-recorded, and then they get judged on it and ranked and scored.
Yes,
Amazing.
try to tell what this pie is without actually looking or tasting what the pie is. And so often there's some kind of trick to kind of get through it that's something out of the box, and sometimes it's just the most straightforward answer. And it's comedians, so they do it in a very funny way.
Oh, I can't wait. Thank you.
Rob, I have a task for you.
Yes.
Right. Marry, screw, kill. Ready?
Uh-huh.
Taskmaster the game show.
Uh-huh.
Taskmaster from the MCU. Or Taskmaster from the comics.
Well, I would marry the game show because it makes me feel good. It's very comforting.
And he would probably marry the host of the game show. I think he's a odd straight man, but Rob is really
very
into
charismatic
him because he's very clever and funny. Yes.
I would kill the one from the comic, I think, because that was the most deadly, I think. I have only read the character in the comic a bit, so I feel like I would want to kill that version, and I guess I would want to romantically be involved with the one from the MCU, I guess. Yeah, let's say. I don't know.
All right, Elliot, what's your podcast presently?
I just did a grocery store pickup, and on the way to the grocery store pickup, I listened to the latest episode of Spectales. The M. Maxwell Prince one?
Oh, the other. It's the other ice cream man. Ice cream man. Right.
So Spectales is if you're listening to Dear Watchers a lot, I'm hoping you're listening to Spectales also. Jake and Jesus do a great job. They interview a lot of great celebrity guests and have really fun episodes. And I just really enjoy listening to them because they do parts of the podcast are about recent pickups. So what comic books they've recently picked up. And I like the speculation part, but I really like the story, the Grail Tales about people finding a comic they really, really wanted or getting a signature they really wanted. Those are I love those fun stories. So I was just listening to that in the car. I just started it. I'm 25 minutes into the episode.
And
go for it.
I just finished listening to Rob and me on Comic Book Keepers and started the latest episode of 10 Cent Takes on the DC Holiday Special Comics. So I'm straddling 2 podcasts. I don't usually, I was telling you all before we started, I don't usually listen to us other than when we need to edit. But I really like listening to Comic Book Keepers and what Lance does over there with comics. And I wanted to hear our conversation again because it was so much fun to have it. So why not listen to it again?
It was a great episode. I loved it. It was great.
Thank you. All right.
I hate to interrupt again,
Here we
but
go.
now there's a giant skeleton in a black robe, and he's just pointing at it. Use your words. Use your words. I don't know what he wants. He's just pointing, so I guess he's pointing into the next segment, the future.
All right, so for our final segment of today's year in review, we're actually going to look ahead into 2023. And we are going to start with, we're going to be making predictions or wishes of what we want. So let's start with what we think the most likely thing that will happen in something we're a fan of that we want to happen next year. So I'll kick us off for this one. And I think two of you are going to laugh at me. I think we will meet an X-Men character in the MCU. And so I'm choosing that for my most likely. And maybe I'll be wrong, and we'll a year from now find out. But I think that's the most likely, and that's what I would like to see happen. Do you have seems realistic.
A character, or you're just going to keep it vague and just an X-Men
then
character?
That makes my chances go down, right? Like then I'm getting my odds or whatever gambling speak there is start to decrease. So no, I'm keeping it broad. An X-Men character in the MCU. Not a side character, an actual member of the team, a member of the X-Men that we know as an X-Man will show up in the MCU. That's what I want to happen, that I think is most likely in 2023. Fingers crossed. All right, Elliot, my guess is yours might be MCU too, so let's go to you.
It's not, and I've been a doubter of yours. I've been a doubter of yours in all your predictions, but I'm going to support you on this one, Guido. I do think, because we know that Hugh Jackman Wolverine is going to show up in some capacity as Deadpool, but that's not 2023. I do think you're going to get. I think you're going to get it. Mine is DC related, shockingly, and I've been not a huge DC. I'm not a DC movie fan, and I've not been dabbling in DC Comics until very recently. And my most likely, this is really vague. It's kind of lame. I want there to be some announcement. The comics are doing really well, so I guess I'm shifting now that James Gunn and John Safran have been announced as... Is it John Safran? Is that right? Peter,
right?
Peter, yeah.
Have
been announced as like taking over and finding a new direction for the DCU. I just saw an announcement that James Gunn is writing Superman. I'm no judgments there. I need some other announcement. I want there to be... And I think there will be a casting, a storyline, something that's happening in the Superman world that gets me as excited as I was when other things have been announced. Like I haven't been really excited by it. Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing an amazing job, and Tom Taylor have been doing an amazing job with the Superman comics. That's got me excited. I want to feel that same excitement in the visual TV movie realm. The Superman and Lois TV show.
So I guess it has to be a movie because, Superman and Lois.
Right, because the Superman and Lois is doing really well. Let me try to make a prediction. Yes, I want the movie to be announced. That's what I guess I want, right? The most likely thing. Like, we know the writer's attached. I want the actor or the date to be announced, and I want the date to actually
or a title that gives you a little bit more of a clue.
Yeah, like Superman Birthright. That would
right, exactly.
drive me nuts. Yeah, that would make me go crazy. Yep.
All right. I don't know that that's the most likely, but hopefully.
It's more likely than anything else I'm about to say.
All right, Nancy, what is something you want to see happen that you think is likely going to happen in anything you're a fan of?
Okay, well, first of all, I love this question or this series of questions because it feels like the conversation, I think it is, the conversation that we always have when we're like driving in our family van with you two to the movie that we all, whenever we go see one of the new MCU movies, and we're always like, what do we think is going to happen? And you all have your very well researched responses, and I'm like, oh, that feels good. I think I'd like so and so. That's the same.
That inspired this segment.
Okay.
100%.
I'm sorry that we're not in the van headed to a new release. But it's also funny because for these questions, I do know, none of this is founded in any possible knowledge, research, background. So it's just like, so I can't even remember if I ran this by you. I would really I don't know if it's the most likely, I want Kate Bishop to show up somewhere. I adored her character. I want more, I'm all for the strong and funny female characters in the MCU. You know how I feel about my preference for any of the MCU grounded on Earth in reality, not about the multiverse. So I want her somewhere. I don't know if it's likely at all.
The thing is, though, Nancy, she probably is going to show up this year. So I think it's most likely. But I think the most likely place she's going to show up in is in Ant-Man Quantumania.
Okay, but okay.
Yo, you think? You think?
I just think because Cassie Lang's in it, and she says, I'm wondering if she's friends with Kate Bishop. I don't know.
I would really like, after Rob shares his too, that of these, we keep track of these, and mine is the most likely to. If it's a year from now, mine's the only one that's happened.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty likely.
Although if a year from now there's not an X-Man introduced, I think will start to slowly lose his mind. So we'll see. There's only so long he can wait.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
So Rob, what is yours?
Well, mine's not comic related. Everything I'm going to say for this segment is about a horror franchise.
Ooh.
And
the same franchise?
No, different horror franchises.
Oh, okay.
And the first is a confirmed return of an old favorite, probably my favorite horror franchise. We know that Friday the 13th will be coming back in the form of a television series this next year that will be called Crystal Lake or something like that, and it's being run by Brian Fuller. And there's been a lot of legal problems, legal hurdles with Friday the 13th and Jason Voorhees and those rights. So finally coming back. And my prediction will seem very specific, but I think it's a pretty good one. So my prediction is that on this new series, Jason is going to be queer. And that seems very specific, but
with Brian Fuller being the showrunner,
exactly.
I think that's a solid it fits in the most likely category.
Yeah. So Brian Fuller, great queer out showrunner. He also created Hannibal, which Hannibal Lecter became queer over the course of that show, and also we know from Jason lore that Jason is picked on, and in the past it's because he looked different or he was or something like that. But I think that's not going to be enough to make a whole TV show. So I think maybe the reason he's picked on is because he is this queer kid. And we also know Jason has a really close relationship with his mother. Maybe a little too close in some ways. And there's definitely some queer ramifications there, and almost a Norman Bates connection I think that you can also make as well. And I could definitely see this being kind of fleshed out in the series that they're going to make, especially because we know it's going to be set in the past. It's not adult Jason in the hockey mask, at least just yet. So I think that would be seen, and it would just be cool, like, if Jason becomes canonically, or at least in this universe of the show, a queer character.
It'll be a good moral tale. Like, don't mess with queer kids.
Exactly. They'll harpoon Kevin Bacon. Going back to Kevin Bacon.
Queer person put on a hockey mask though. Like, wouldn't it be like a hockey mask or something?
They like sports too.
All right. So moving into the moderately likely wishes we have for 2023. Elliot?
Oh man, I'm sticking with the Superman theme, but not really. I've heard this idea, so it's not my own idea. I did not really like Henry Cavill as Superman. I haven't really seen him in anything else. I wasn't like a huge. I'm like, okay, Man of Steel was okay until the third act, but now that he is not coming back as Superman and quit The Witcher to presumably play Superman, and he's not doing it, I think it would be hilarious and quite reasonable if he played, speaking, Rob, of the Squadron Supreme, if he got cast as Hyperion in the Squadron Supreme, and you guys, we were talking about this the other day, and they got Gail Gadot and like Ben Affleck or even... And
Leslie Grace was, I thought, the best one.
play like their versions in the Squadron Supreme, and the MCU hired them. I think it'd be it would be perfect casting. It would be hilarious because those characters were created anyways as a mirror to the Justice League. And so they would just take the old Justice League actors and put them in the MCU. I think it'd be really funny. I heard that idea somewhere, and it's been in my head. I can't get it out of my head. I think it would be amazing.
Totally.
So,
I've heard a lot.
It was connected to a rumor, and probably unfounded rumor, so I'm happy to repeat it, but about Loki season 2. So we will find out this year if your prediction is correct, because that was where I saw some of the reports that Cavill might be playing Hyperion was connected to Loki season 2.
Yeah. I think it's definitely going around, so I'd be curious. And we were saying, too, it'd be neat, like, if you change the gender of Nighthawk from a man to a woman, and then you could have Leslie Grace come in and get to play her version of a Batman character. So I just think...
We said Grant Gustin.
Grant Gustin could show up, or there's so many. There's an Archer character, so of course you can borrow someone, Stephen Amell or someone like that. I think there's a lot of probably hurdles in terms of schedule and money and maybe contracts that people signed, but I would be shocked if someone at Marvel is also not talking about this.
It'd be really fun.
All
Nancy,
right,
what
so
about
next
you?
Moderately likely wish.
Guys, these could be like just thrown up in the air, and one can fall into moderately or loose. Don't know, but since we just finished watching White Lotus, that's on my mind, and you all watch it? You guys watch it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so brilliant.
Yes, a favorite show ever. Yes.
Yeah, truly brilliant, and so it's really fun to think about who they might cast for next season, and again, based in absolutely nothing factual, pure conjecture. So I don't know if it's moderately or not, but I just feel like John Hamm would be perfect in it because he. All of the characters are entitled, privileged, not very appealing characters for the most part. And John Hamm just he nails that role. I can just...
He can also do the comedy that they all do.
Yeah, the comedy, but also the drama. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he'd be brilliant. Don't know at all likely. I just sort of threw that one against the wall and was like, that's going to be my moderately.
No, I
thought you were going to stay on theme and say Jonathan Bailey because he'd fit in that world quite well too. So
yes.
Oh,
he's shooting Wicked, so he might be a little busy.
Be a couple, and that would be perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, totally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can be some of the gays that were trying to kill Jennifer Coolidge.
Exactly.
I love it. All right, Rob, what's your wish that is moderately likely? Is it Friday the 13th? No,
but another horror franchise. So we've seen a lot of horror franchises come back. We saw Hellraiser this year. We saw Candyman, I think, the year before. We know we're getting an Exorcist movie also coming back. We, of course, had the big Halloween, but we have not seen a Nightmare on Elm Street series. Also, the rights to Nightmare on Elm Street reverted back to the Wes Craven estate this past year. So I do think you'll see a Nightmare on Elm Street something, but that would be too simple for this. So I think kind of sticking with how how we're seeing everything with Scream and the kind of embrace of legacy and stuff like that, I think you will see. My prediction is that Robert Englund would come back for one final go as Freddy because he's really expressed interest in it. Also, because the character is in makeup, age doesn't really necessarily play too much of a factor, and also another Nancy, I think will come back. I think Heather Langenkamp would come back as kind of her ultimate final girl, Nancy, the character Nancy from the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And I just think it was a series that kind of ended. It never kind of got its proper end. I think the New Nightmare, the last movie the two of them were in, was really great, but it then kind of petered off and the remake never came anywhere. So I think you'll kind of see in the vein of all of these kind of reboots that we've seen that we will see a return of Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp in Nightmare on Elm Street.
I got two title pitches for it. Drop Dead Freddy, because he'll die.
Oh, great. Yeah.
That's what they call callback. And then Old Man Freddy.
Yes, totally. I think that would be really, that would be really great. Like he's so weakened, he's weak.
Man Hawkeye.
Exactly, and they both got claws. Totally.
My moderately likely wish is possibly the likeliest, but I stuck it in moderate. It's comic book based, not film based, and it's that I want Marvel to have a solo title that they're publishing starring a queer character because they don't. they're way behind on DC on this, and they have a good amount of people to choose from. I love the Pride anthologies, but they need to put someone front and center, and they have a lot of people to choose from. DC's doing a killing with Superman, Son of Kal-El, with Poison Ivy, with Harley Quinn. They have so many titles that are starring their queer characters, and Marvel needs to catch up.
Really?
So.
They don't have any out right now?
No, they have out, but they're not starring a solo.
No, sorry, I didn't mean like out of the. I meant like they're no.
Oh yeah, you know that was my runner up. I stuck with movies, but I wanted Marvel to like step up their game a little bit. I've been so excited by DC recently.
Yes.
I agree with you. I just think they can do more with the power that they have. They can do more social commentary and do really powerful stories from their creators, and they're playing it safe.
And they surely are, because they're creating new characters, they're bringing back old characters, but they're putting them in ensemble books or they're putting them in anthology books, and it's time to move someone front and center. So I hope that we see that this year. All right, last but not least, the highly improbable thing that we wish for in 2023. So,
okay.
Rob, kick us off.
Yeah, so I mentioned two really big horror franchises. I'm going to go for a little bit more obscure one, but one of my favorite all-time horror franchises is the Phantasm franchise. So I don't know if other people know the Phantasm franchise, but started in the 70s, and they actually ran up into the fifth and final movie came out just a few years ago. And what's really cool about all the movies is they were all written and directed by the same person. Well, he did not direct the last movie, but he wrote all the movies. They all also star all the same people, and the villain has unfortunately passed away, Angus Scrimm, as the tall man. So I think that's a really great end to that series, but then I think there's a lot of richness to that world that could be explored in a television series. And so it takes place, there's aliens, there's other dimensions, there's all this kind of stuff. And I would love to see it explored as a television series with like a new cast with the creator Don Coscarelli involved in some way. Why I think it would be improbable is it's definitely not a big name one. The last movie took years to make because they were scrounging up money, and if you are doing certain production things, I think you would need a decent amount of money. But it's a franchise with a lot of passionate fans like myself, so I would love to see something else happen with that. I would love it not just to end and not to have a remake, but to have a continuation of the story in some way. Yeah, so I don't know. Probably not likely, but
that's a 0 on the probability scale.
Well, Nancy, what's your
Next
0
up,
on
Nancy?
the probability scale?
I'll meet you with your 0 on the probability scale. And I don't even know if there's a place where this person could show up. This is what's so funny is, you might be able to guess what this one is from our various conversations. I want Chris Evans back as Captain. And I'm like, I haven't even asked Elliot if there's like even a movie where it would make sense for Captain.
I think there are at least 2 movies this year where it would make sense. So you might not be the most improbable.
Oh, come on. I mean,
I think you are. I think I'd put that in moderate.
Which movies are you talking about?
Quantumania is an easy one, without a doubt.
Yep.
And we know nothing about the Marvels, so I'd say that's another possibility.
I'd say
we know nothing about
Loki
it.
season 2 is more likely if they're doing multiple.
Yeah, Loki season 2, I agree. I don't know if TV is the best place for that huge an event. So, but Quantumania, I think, is a pretty strong contender.
Well, this is how the MCU can pull me into believing in the multiverse.
All right, we'll let Kevin know when we see him next. That's what he needs to do.
Okay, good. All right.
I love that. That is perfect. All right, my improbable is really, really improbable. I tried to not pick like just total utter fantasy. I tried to stay maybe realistic. So this answers your question on my first one, which is the X-Men character. So I kept myself safe in the most likely by saying an X-Men character. Now I'm going to say what 2 characters I want to see. And it's not going to happen this year, but it is going to happen in the next few years. And that is, I want a true to comic Rogue and Gambit on screen. And I will be just die. I will die. And it's not going to happen this year, I don't think. But I think it will happen eventually. They need to be true to comics. Anna Paquin did not do Rogue justice. We don't even talk about the Gambit in X-Men Origins Wolverine. So I want Rogue and Gambit from the comic page in my face.
Rogue, I mean, she could be in the Marvels. They could do that Carol Danvers.
Yeah, totally.
I do hope that's my number 1 and number 3 fused together, and that happens. Even I think I joked to you both that the stinger could be Carol flying near the bridge in San Francisco, and suddenly she gets her power sucked and drops into the bay, and that's the stinger. So I would love that so much. But yeah, I want Rogue and Gambit.
That'd be awesome.
And Elliot, where do you wish we would go this year?
It's never going to happen. And it's something I wish for with everything. And I think you guys will agree with me, is that we live now in a culture where there are like very few surprises. Like Spider-Man No Way Home was not a great movie for me. I think it would have been 10 times better if there was just no inkling that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to be in it. It would just be so surprising. So I'm so tired of being able to just with everything. There's solicits, there's ads for things, trailers, as we all know. And I would love in any fandom, but I'm going to stick with the MCU because it's my main love. Comics. I love comics, but the MCU gets me very excited. I want there to be a surprise movie. And so here's what I think is going to be
the Beyonce of films, the Beyonce album
exactly.
of
here's
MCU films.
Let me explain in detail what's not going to happen, everybody. Is that the Secret Invasion television series on Disney Plus will be announced for March. And the week before it's supposed to premiere, our final trailer will be an ad for the movie that's going to come out the following week. And because Secret Invasion is a huge story, it's grounded. Winter Soldier is one of my favorite solo films that has the potential to do this. The teaser trailer was there. And I would go out of my mind if Secret Invasion was all of a sudden this tentpole film crossover with people in it that we have no idea. And it was this surprise thing, this movie that would come out. I would love it. And it's not going to happen.
Elliot,
no.
If you want a true surprise, you just do what I do. You don't listen to podcasts. You don't read anything. Your news people talk about it. MCU, and then you walk into the movies, and if you put in the van with Guido and Rob and you'd know nothing.
We could even make an agreement where we won't even tell you what movie we're driving to.
Maybe that'll be a New Year's resolution for 2024. Nancy, we're going to see Wakanda Forever. What's that? It's a sequel to Black Panther, a week.
It's not you're more of a neophyte than I am, but
well, I do think, sadly, I think it's really only because the behemoth nature of the industry that I think that won't happen. I think that Marvel is the kind of company, Marvel Studios, where they would try to do something like that, I think. That's my guess. I don't have a lot of evidence, of course, but I just think, sadly, because of the way distribution and movie theaters still work and the just archaic behemoth of an industry it still is, I sadly think that won't happen. But it happened in the music industry, and it really only did because of streaming, right? It couldn't have happened if we lived in a world of production and manufacturing and all of that. But thanks to streaming, it happened in music.
The other big difference with Werewolf by Night. They tried with Werewolf by Night. People knew about it, but it wasn't really announced until a month before.
Right, a few weeks, yeah.
The other big difference, though, is maybe you have 50 people maybe work on an album an album that size, and you have hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe even 1,000 people really working on a movie, and if one person lets it slip, right, then the whole project is ruined. So it comes down to one or two jerks really ruining it for everyone. Maybe they could just fit it into the schedule. They're shooting Secret Invasion, the TV show, and in between. I know they're all in these big bunkers in Georgia anyway, so that's maybe how they can kind of get it done. But yeah, it's really hard. Loose lips would definitely sink that ship.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that all of our most likely things happen. I hope that all of our moderate things happen. And I hope at least one of our highly improbable things happen. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure we got it. I think actually Nancy's the closest, I'm going to say. With our improbable predictions, I think Nancy is the only one that I could actually see happening in 2023.
Wow. That's what I'm here for, guys.
I agree, but I don't know what phantasm is, so I got to go.
Well, because I think that should be all you need to know.
Yeah, I guess that's
you don't
true.
know what it is, so it's not going to become a TV show, right? Like there you have it.
J.J. Abrams did do the remaster of the original movie, so JJ is a fan. He's got some pull.
Yeah.
Do you all feel like changed? Do you feel new people? Do you feel redeemed? Do you have the holiday spirit going into 2023? Did the ghosts change your life? The ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come?
No, but I have some things to add to my 2023 read and watch list. I hope everyone does after listening to this.
Yeah. And Rob, I'm sure you're going to tell us the last line of Christmas Carol or something now.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
Oh,
it's in our close.
Okay.
In our closeout.
Okay.
Don't jump things.
Well, then please don't turn off your podcasting machines, whatever you're listening to us on, though we are wrapping up. And before we do that fully, Elliot and Nancy, thank you for joining us on this double date as we wrap up 2022 and look ahead to 2023.
Thanks for having me and us, and I love double dating with you guys. Just feel really lucky that you are uncles to our children and the family that we get to choose to spend time with. So thanks for letting me tag along for this episode.
It was a joy.
As usual, I can't go after Nancy because she says things so much more beautifully than me. On a multiversal podcast, I think this was the ultimate crossover. We just pulled someone from Earth like -200.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever like the blackout Earth is, where they don't see anything else.
No, you're from whatever the Pride and Prejudice Earth is, like wherever that.
Okay.
Opened a portal, pulled her in, and it was really fun to cross worlds with you.
Yes. So thank you for listening, and leave a review, please, wherever you're listening.
And speaking of Scrooges, who knows what social media accounts will exist in the future or that we'll even want to be on, but you can follow us on all social media platforms at Dear Watchers.
And everyone should keep pondering the possibilities.
And Uatu says, Uatu bless us, everyone.